One time my dad and I picked up a hitchhiker. As we drove, my dad and I tried to make some chit-chat with the guy. Turned out he was a Vietnam vet, who had been hitchhiking for many years. He told us a bit about his story, and then it started getting weird. Warning, this is not going where you expect. His name was Danny. He was skinny and wore a very dirty Lynyrd Skynyrd hat. He began telling us how he had been used in a number of experiments in the military. Mostly experiments related to pain desensitization and mind control. Then he started telling us how he was involved in a series of time travel experiments. By this time, my father was getting pretty uncomfortable and tried changing the subject. "Well, it's a good thing we pick you up, so you don't have to walk alone in the cold," my dad said. "I don't mind the cold," Danny said. My dad said, "Well, at least it's more comfortable sitting in a car, right?" Danny looked out the window and ignored him. I started asking him more questions about time travel, and specifically how the machinery looked and operated. To my surprise, he described in intricate detail a very compelling model of a time travel machine, incorporating light, sound, electricity, and a series of chemicals that he rattled off like he had done it 1,000 times. I was so captivated by his explicit description, I kept asking more detailed questions. Meanwhile my dad, who was completely tuned out at this point, looked out the window and started humming to himself. Pretty soon we arrived at our house. I asked Danny if he wanted any food and he politely said he would be on his way. I offered to drive him a little further down the road to a major intersection, which he accepted. We left my dad at the house, got back on the road, and started driving. As soon as we got back in the car, Danny said something that shocked me. "You ought to stay away from that fella." "What? You mean my dad?" "Yeah, one of the things they taught me was to read people, and you should avoid people like that." I had never heard anything like this. My dad is a pastor and everyone considers him a really nice guy. I asked Danny, again, if he wanted a bite to eat. He readily accepted. We stopped at a diner and he ate like a stray dog. Over lunch, he went back and forth in excruciating detail, explaining fascinating technologies he had witnessed in his time in the military. Covering everything from space travel, time travel, alchemy, and his own quasi-human experiences. He claimed that he had been shot many times, but the bullets went right through him, due to a hypermolecularization that would make his density so low that things passed through him, and also allowed him at times to move at the speed of light. We discussed mathematics, and I was pretty shocked by his profound grip on differential geometry, molecular physics, and he even went on a long rant about number-based systems. He felt very strongly that our decile counting system was the reason most people would never understand deep scientific complexities. I scribbled notes on napkins like a crazy person, trying to contain what he was describing. After lunch, we sat in the parking lot while he smoked cigarettes. He explained how he had made friends with a rattlesnake and then a mountain lion, and how he had frozen to the ground, but thawed back out again, because he had gone through some kind of hibernation training and had chemicals injected into his skin. About 8 months later, I checked myself into an ER for suicidal depression. Or rather, my partner checked me in, because I was in a shattered emotional state and could barely talk. I had recently left my job, and was trying to pivot my skills into a new career. It wasn't going well. I had always suffered from depression and suicidal ideation, but this was the very worst I'd ever experienced. My partner asked my parents what to do. "Just leave him alone, he'll get over it." Luckily she didn't do that. We ended up hiring a very expensive therapist, and I began working to unravel my emotions. That was almost 3 years ago. In the past 3 years I've uncovered dozens of memories I had suppressed of my father abusing me as a child. Many dark, horrible secrets I had completely forgotten about, or chosen to forget. As these secrets started coming back in weird bits, I would call one of my siblings to ask if he remembered these events, To my shock, he remembered all of them, and often pieced the whole story together for me. He thought I knew, and was very sorry to realize I was rediscovering many of these events for the first time.